And welcome back. Homelessness remains one of the most pressing challenges in New York City, with thousands of individuals and families relying on shelters as they wait for permanent housing. But what if that could be drastically reduced from 2 years to 2 months? Well, we've got somebody who's going to share with us a little bit by transforming the housing system, by streamlining the process for voucher holders, ensuring that they can move from shelters to affordable, stable homes. Joining me now to share more about this impactful work is the CEO and founder of AnthosIHome, Laura Lazarus. And thank you so much for it. Is it Lazarus or Lazarus?
Lazarus.
Lazarus. Thank you so much, Laura. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And when we talk about homelessness, I mean, obviously across New York City, a lot is on the rise.
Yes, there are more than 130,000 people in shelter right now. Of that, 45,000 are children. And my understanding is about 1 in 6 students who are homeless are living in the Bronx right now.
And when we look at the housing situation, the homelessness crisis, obviously your work is doing a lot to combat homelessness and really deal with the issues out there. With boots on the ground, what are you finding?
So we are really focused on helping those who are living in shelter find permanent housing and do that quickly and efficiently with a goal of 2 months. And as you mentioned, right now it's taking families on average 1 to 2 years. So that's what we're finding is it just can take a really long time to find a unit that works for people and then processing that unit to get that person into a new home.
Yeah.
But there's a real need for this.
Obviously, yeah, a huge need. And when we talk about that need being so prevalent in our community, given the fact that uh, people need homes and at the same time also finding that right space, because we do have a housing crisis. And what are you seeing from your end as far as the housing crisis?
So I just think so many people are suffering because they are not able to find a home. And that's the challenge. But the kind of the crux of what Anthos Home, where what the organization that I founded is about is that in New York, it's very fortunate for many families, they actually qualify for what's called a housing voucher. Some of your viewers might be familiar with the term Section 8 or rental subsidies, which is an amazing resource. But the problem is that it's very difficult to use it. Nationally, about 50% of these went unused recently. So the idea behind Anthos Home is to help make it easier for landlords to rent to people with these housing vouchers and also to help make it easier for the households who are looking for units with these vouchers to utilize them. And that's what we're really there for. So, for example, we had a family that we were working with, and they had been looking for a home for 1 year and 8 months. Every time they talked to a landlord and they told them they had a voucher, they heard no, they wouldn't hear back at all. And that's what people are experiencing a lot of is just nobody will move forward with them. Once we started to work with them, we were able to identify a unit that worked for their family within a couple of months, and we're able to move them in, within 3 to 4 months. And then that meant that they were able to send their kids to pre-K in the local pre-K. The grandmother who was part of that family was able to start dealing with her chronic health conditions, and the mom was able to start looking for work. But
Yeah.
they weren't really able to do that when they were in shelter.
When you talk about home solutions or solutions towards housing, I know one of the things that you have is called banking apartments. And talk to us about what banking apartments is and how that's been working for you.
So the idea behind banking is that we have a housing team. We have a team of staff who work very closely with landlords, property managers, and brokers to identify units that will work for these housing vouchers throughout New York City. Um, and we then develop relationships with these landlords where we reserve these units for our future tenants. So people who are living in shelter who need these units, they come to us, they need to find housing, and we ideally can show them a unit within a couple of weeks that meets their requirements. And then once they have been approved by the landlord, and we'll help them with that process also, we then work with them and the landlord to put together the package. There's always a paperwork package as part of these vouchers to process that through the government. And our team, we have an operations team who are experts in these vouchers that helps push that package through the government. and then we help them move in.
And you have this unique partnership with landlords, and I know sometimes landlords always don't end up on the right side, but it seems as though for the work that you're doing, you've been able to really capture a very special relationship with landlords.
We have, I think that, oh, sorry. The idea behind our partnership is that we're trying to make this easier for landlords. We understand that it can be confusing, it can be difficult, and we are really there to hold their hands through the process if they need it and support them. So, for example, things can happen along the way that are difficult to resolve with the government agencies. We have relationships within each agency, and so we can help troubleshoot problems that are coming up where a landlord might have a lot of difficulty finding the right person to resolve that issue.
Yeah. And going from 2 years to 2 months, really, that's a real lofty goal at the same time, a lofty achievement.
Yeah, we're not at the 2 months yet. We are hoping to get there. I would say we're more at like 3 to 5 months right now. But
Which is
our
still
hope is,
major, which is still
yes,
major.
still very impactful. And I just want to give you a story about a landlord that we worked with, which kind of elucidates why our services can be so helpful in bringing in new units into this universe. We had a young adult who'd aged out of foster care. She was looking for housing. She identified a unit that worked for her. The landlord actually lived in Florida most of the time, and she only owned 2 units in New York. And she did not have any idea what the voucher program was. So we got on the phone with her. We explained what the program was. And then once she learned about it, which, it does provide guaranteed rent to really support that new tenant. We helped her with the paperwork. We ended up having to send it to her because she was not on the internet, and really walked her through it. And that's the kind of support that we provide. Once the tenant moved in, we provide aftercare for both tenants and landlords for a year. So, for example, once this particular tenant moved in, about 5 or 6 months in, one of the government payments she was expecting did not arrive. So we actually have a flexible pool of funding to help make those payments while we sort out what the issue is with the government. So this landlord kind of experienced all of that support all along the way. And the result was that we had a very happy tenant who was stably housed and, was able to focus on her future life.
And talking about success, I mean, let me mention this here. It says since we received our first referral from the New York City Administration of Children's Services, which is known as ACS, in June of 2023, you've moved in more than 150 families and individuals into permanent housing, and 100% housing retention rate after 12 months. That's major. And I want to tackle that for a minute because I want to talk about that housing retention rate, because that's something that really we see a lot of challenge in. So from your perspective, what's the secret sauce there in that housing retention rate?
So just to note, we're almost at 100, 220 households right now. So I'm
All
thrilled to
right.
share that with you. We'll be at 250, we think, in a few weeks. The housing retention rate is really about our ongoing support with tenants once they move into the unit. So we provide a lot of support with them if there are issues. And we use that flexible funding to help make sure that any arrears are addressed. And those arrears could be a tenant emergency. It could be something around the government payment. It could be a concern about utilities. But what that means is when we iron that out early on, it means that the tenant's going to have a much greater chance of success long term. And that's obviously helpful for the landlord as well. So another example is we had a great tenant. She had been looking for a unit for 7 months. She was in college part-time. She was working, super motivated, again, having a lot of trouble finding a unit. We were able to do that for her within a couple of months and move her in a month later. But once she moved in, she realized that her utility costs were really high. She tried to get the landlord to investigate. Unfortunately, the landlord would not do that. So we actually sent an electrician out to figure out what was going on, and she was being charged for her neighbor's utilities. Then we were able to get the landlord to fix the problem, which she probably would not have been able to do on her own. And now she only is paying her own utility costs, which of course is much more reasonable. And that again means that she has not accrued arrears, and she's able to have a successful program. She was actually our first tenant, and she has graduated from our program and has renewed her lease and recertified her voucher successfully.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And also, you've also been successful with youth that have been transferring out of transitioning out of foster care. Understanding about 100 of those
Yeah.
have also been able to have that retention as well.
Yes, we're so thrilled that we have been partnering with the Administration for Children's Services, and we have moved more than 100 young adults who are aging out of foster care. Youth who are graduating out of foster care have a high likelihood of becoming homeless. And so our ability to find them housing and support them in that journey. And as you can imagine, a landlord is going to be very skeptical about a young adult who maybe doesn't have a long-term, employment. They might not have finished their education. So with our support, we're really able to kind of help make that matchmaking between them and the landlord possible. We also do a lot of advocating when we are submitting, when a young adult has picked a unit, we do a lot of advocating with the landlord to get them to accept them, to say, look, this young adult is responsible. Here's some reasons why you should agree to move forward with them. And that obviously has worked.
Yeah. And, as I said earlier, having those conversations with landlords, landlords are not always, they're quite skeptical sometimes and really
Yes.
concerned about their property, and rightfully so. But you seem to have gotten a good grip on really being able to have that good relationship with landlords to advance families into a meaningful transition.
Yes, we do a lot around the education of tenants so that they understand what their leases are requiring of them. So a lot of leases have house rules. We will walk through those with the tenant. And I think that then makes them a better tenant, right? They understand what their obligations are. They understand what their financial obligations are and how to plan for that. So that is part of what we do, is really help them with that education. And then once they've moved in, our tenant team will check in with them. We'll actually go visit once a quarter, and we talk to them on the phone or text with them every month just to make sure that everything's going well, and checking in with the landlord as well. There can be a lot of bumps, once you move into an apartment, for anybody. And so we're there to really help them sort that out, especially if it's their first apartment living by themselves.
Yeah. And so, moving towards the future, what are your future goals and aspirations? I know you've got some, great success, but I know you're not satisfied yet.
So we really want to address the large homelessness challenges that we have here in New York. And so we are hoping to build on the infrastructure that we built here to really serve more households in need. And our goal is by this summer to have housed a total of 500 households, and then begin to expand on that in future years, so that just we get faster and we are serving more households. And Anthos means blossom, and our goal is to help as many people and families blossom in their permanent homes as possible.
Yeah. What challenges are you really facing right now that maybe the public may not be so aware of? We talked about the success, but of course, with success does come some adversity.
So I think the biggest challenges are just additional funding for us to be able to continue to expand and grow. And also, we're always looking for more partnerships with landlords and brokers and property managers. So we're always, we have a nice pipeline of units, but we're always looking for more partners for that.
Yeah. And so, how do people go about doing that?
So we have a website, AnthosHome.org, and we have a whole section related to landlords where they can sign up, and we can explain the program to them and all the benefits that they would receive in working with us and helping to address this, huge need in New York.
You know, I see you being able to, really knock this out of the park here, and congratulations to you for the great work that you're doing. But when I look at the struggle, I mean, I know that in some ways you almost make it look easy and too easy for some people. But as I look, I say, there's a recipe here. There's something that can be done. And it's really not as hard as people are really projecting. Am I correct?
The process is quite difficult. So I think the whole idea behind Anthos is to simplify it and to provide landlords and tenants with the support. The amount of detail that's required to successfully submit a voucher to a government agency is a lot. And what our team does is, because we do it every day, in and out every day, we really understand the nuances of those applications. That's why we can help put together an application that is easily approved by the government. And that's what we're striving to do,
Yeah.
is to make it easier for people, because it really can be daunting.
Excuse me, I know it can, it really can be. The work that you're doing, though, when I talk about, transitioning out of foster care, that relationship and really being able to make that connection with ACS, and talk about having, ACS as a partner in this. I mean, obviously, they trust you, and you're being able to come through and deliver.
ACS is a wonderful partner. They've embraced this new idea of how you can house um, people in need, that they have not really been able to provide this service. Their staff are working on a lot of other things at foster care agencies and prevention agencies. And so having a group like us, who is an expert in housing and supporting, making sure that their young adults and their families who are involved in child welfare are able to make sure that they can access these incredibly um, amazing resources, which are housing vouchers, and make sure that they make their way to an actual apartment, is what makes this partnership really work for us and them.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, as the future is here in New York City, we look across and we see the numbers are continuing to rise. We see the challenges continuing to rise, and therefore, the workload for yourself is going to be increasing. Talk to me about the staff and the people that you have working with you, and how you're able as a team to really make this thing happen. And who do you have on staff?
So we have a lot of amazing staff. I'm so proud of them. We have more than 50 people at this point, and we started serving our first client in the summer of 2023. So we have been going through some rapid growth, but I think we just have the staff are just thrilled to really be coming at this problem in a different way and being part of this incredibly creative idea, which came out of a model that was done in California and has been in operation for more than 10 years with a group called Brilliant Corners. But bringing that to New York to life in this current infrastructure here in New York City is just really exciting to a lot of the staff who work here. So we have people who have experience working with vouchers. We have people with lived experience who are part of our team. We have people who have a lot of experience working with youth who have aged out of foster care. So that's kind of the expertise. And then we have people who are just into the nitty gritty of like putting together a form or processing a furniture request. So we have people who just want to get it done, and
Yeah.
it's great.
I want to ask, a little bit about that, because when you talk about having, a great staff and a well-rounded staff, one of the things that you mentioned was people who've had lived experience. And so I take it there are people who've been through your process and come on back to be able to now serve as an advocate.
Yes, I mean, we have people who might have aged out of foster care or had some experience with homelessness. And I think that just really brings a different lens to their work, right? Because it had affected them in their life. And so it's just all that more meaningful to them. And we're so thrilled to be able to do it as an organization and then support them as well in this work here.
Yeah. Vouchers. I know that we talked about a little bit earlier about the whole, about the whole voucher process. And I do want to just revisit that for a minute, because you talk about, the voucher holders. And you could have a voucher, but the truth is you could be holding on for quite some time. In the life of that voucher holder, can you just share with us a little bit about what they're experiencing? Because I want to highlight, how you're able to make this transition, but really, for the person that's on the other side of this, they're really in some real difficult and sometimes back against the wall circumstances.
Yes. So let's say you're a family residing in shelter. You have been typically, if you meet the income requirements, with which most shelter residents do because they're very low income, they will be able to receive a city issued voucher or maybe a federal voucher through the New York City Housing Authority or through the housing department. So they will have in hand a voucher. It will have a time limit on it. That time limit can often be extended. But the challenge is that they have to go out and look for units where a landlord is willing to accept their voucher. We find many landlords do not want to work with voucher holders. And they are, if they don't work with voucher holders, that means that they are not abiding by the law, and, there are discrimination clauses. But we are trying to kind of approach this on the other side, which is to make it easier for landlords to rent to people with vouchers so that they don't have that experience. But they can be knocking on doors for months and be told no, or they are just ghosted. That's kind of the experience for a voucher holder, is that they have to be out there trying to compete with others to find very limited units. And what we're doing is trying to bring in more units. One of the other issues that voucher holders experience is that many units to be rented to somebody with a voucher, they have to meet inspection requirements that are kind of above and beyond a normal Department of Building requirement. And many units that we look at, like 95%, have some kind of repair need. They're often modest. They can be things like an outlet, or the water temperature is not quite right, or a window lock is missing. They're not high cost items. But if a household from shelter is looking for one of those units and the unit doesn't pass inspection, the landlord won't necessarily make those repairs. But because of our involvement, we're able to get those landlords to make those repairs. And even in some situations, we can help them with those repairs, either getting them done or even helping to pay for them. They're modest, $2,500, $3,500. But getting those done means we're bringing in more units that are available to voucher holders. But without that, a household in shelter might have found a unit that the landlord accepted it, and then it was submitted to the government and it doesn't pass inspection. And then that's the end. And then they have to start all over again. So that's kind of some of the cycle that's happening for people who are living in shelter.
You know, you spoke about being able to assist the landlord to really, get across the inspection finish line. The fact that you could actually help a landlord be able to do that, because sometimes landlords are really, cash strapped, and
Yes,
they want to put somebody in, but money doesn't allow them to do that. So the fact that you're able to actually do that is also a part of the win. And I think that could be a potential game changer in terms of solving the crisis there.
Yes, no, I mean, definitely. It's also just a hassle, right? And so our kind of being involved, holding their hand, coordinating with the inspectors, all of those things add time and can be a challenge for an owner. And, yes, they should do it, but, if we're there to just help them out, it just makes things easier. We had an example where a landlord had agreed to do these repairs, but they wanted the super said, you know what, I'm not going to open up the unit for you. You're going to have a staff person there for 3 days. So we offered the super $25. Yes, he should have done that as part of his job. But for that $25, he did open up the unit. It was a small thing, but because we can be flexible and nimble and just kind of make decisions to really make things happen, it just eases the process.
Yeah, you're speaking gospel there, because I think that's it. Being nimble and being able to do it really can open the door for some potential clients to be able to really have get the housing that they actually deserve. So,
Yes.
from your perspective, do you see things getting better?
I do. I mean, we're very hopeful. I think that New York has so many resources, and I think that we've seen more and more landlords be interested in working with us. It was a challenge at the beginning because they're like, who are you? We don't trust you. We don't know who you are. And now that we have a track record, we're able to bring in, 30 to 40 units a month. So we're getting more and more different kinds of landlords. We have small mom and pop landlords, slightly bigger landlords, different relationships. And I think that they really see the value in kind of continuing to work with us and opening up more doors to people who need housing.
Yeah. Is there a particular time of year that you find to be the most intense for the work that you're doing?
Unfortunately, this is an ongoing huge demand every month of the year.
Yeah.
It's
And-
just, people
Right.
are at risk of losing their housing or just desperate to get out of shelter. There are just so many people. We had a family who had a voucher in process for a number of months, and it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and they were about to be kind of put out of their temporary housing situation. And in order to prevent them from being homeless, we were able to use our flexible funding to put them in a hotel for a few days so that they did not have to spend Thanksgiving in the street or in a shelter. And then we were able to actually work with the government to expedite their voucher and move them in that following Monday.
Wow. As you talk with people across the nation, how do you hear New York comparing to what's going on across the nation?
I mean, New York is not unique. Every single state, every jurisdiction has a homelessness crisis. And everywhere you go, there's a problem and a challenge using vouchers. 50% of housing vouchers went unused, the national ones went unused in 2022. That's because landlords find the program difficult. And there are a bunch of initiatives in different states to address this issue. We think the model that we're using, which we replicated from California, is a great one. But there are other interesting initiatives. So I think there's a lot to learn from what other places are doing, and the collaboration that happens among government, nonprofits, landlords, property owners in other places in the country. And we're thrilled that we're kind of being able to take advantage of that here.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. Well, I do want to thank you for taking the time of being with us. Great conversation, Laura Lazarus being with us. And listen, continue the great work. You're making the lives of so many people better, and while also helping out landlords and really solving a much needed problem that we have in our city and in our community. So thank you so much for the work that you do, Laura.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All righty. Well, we are taking a quick break, but guess what? We do have more here on the Social Justice Forum when we return. We'll be back after this.